Hello there everybody, and thanks for joining me tonight. I'm going to be doing a little bit of live streaming. This is a tribute to Bob Ross and Bill Alexander. They're some of my biggest influences. And one of the things that I've been wanting to do for a long time is translate their painting techniques into something that I can use digitally. And Corel Painter has been a good tool for that. With the newer release of Corel Painter 2017 and the dab stencil technology, now I'm a lot closer to my vision of creating a nice palette knife style effect, which Bob Ross and Bill Alexander would commonly use when they painted mountains. So I'm going to go ahead and do a little bit of painting today. I'm not going to focus too much on questions or comments. I will try to respond to as many as I can, but really I'm just going to try to get a lot of painting done in this live stream. Feel free to comment in before we get started and introduce yourself. Let us know where you're watching from, and I'll go ahead and get started painting here. So I'm using a black canvas today. I've got a little bit of white selected with my new updated airbrush that uses the glazing technology. I'm going to put in a little bit of lightness right here in the center. This is going to be my main light source here. So I'm using light pressure to get this nice gradation of color. I'm going to use a smaller brush. Lighten it here. Colton Lutz is in Washington. Little Polar's here. Hello, Little Polar. They're in Illinois. All right, so I'm going to paint this in grayscale, by the way, and then what I will do is I will end up glazing over it using the glazing brushes. So that'll be my nice light source there. Might go ahead and quickly blend that a little bit. I could use my blenders for that, or I could also go to Effects, Focus, and then I can go to Soften. That's a good way to just blur everything. Circular sometimes works better than Gaussian. So that'll work for my background. I'm going to go ahead and call this Sky and create a new layer. You can't really see my whole layers palette there because my hand is blocking it, but that's okay. You don't need to know what I'm doing over there. Can be my secret. I'm going to make a mountain layer. I'm going to pick a darker color, and I'm going to use my mountain knife. Bigger knife usually works better for this. I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to use black. That way I can see it really well since this is a darker canvas. And I really want to try to fill this in, painting with the edge of the brush. Make sure it's nice and filled in. You can leave a little bit of that gap there. And if you want to follow along with me while I paint, I know you'll have some catching up to do, but you can always watch this again later because it is being recorded. You can get my workspace, which you see here for Corel Painter 2017, which has all these brushes that I'm going to be using. And so if you go to my website, aaronrutten.com, you can download that workspace and follow along. You can follow along tonight, or you can follow along later when you have more time. Using a smaller brush to put in more lumps there on the mountain. Maybe I want to make it more distinct. Give it a big peak like that. And then I'm going to go ahead and right-click on my mountain, choose Select Layer Content, hide the selection with Control-Shift-H, or I have a little shortcut up here at the top for Show Hide Selection. Keeps that selection active and basically keeps me from painting outside of this mountain shape that I just established. I'm going to make a mountain texture layer here, and here's the part you've all been waiting for. I'm going to use the new Smooth Dab Knife Impasto brush. That's a long title, but it does a lot of really cool stuff. Since this is a dab stencil brush, I can now use dab stencils to basically break up the paint and take chunks and pieces out of it, depending on which pattern I select here. I can also combine this dab stencil flow map with the paper grain, so now I have two levels that I can overlay on top of each other and change independently to create these textures. So for mountains, flow map works pretty well for the dab stencil. And then if you wanted to, you could go in here to the paper and you could add a paper like simulated wood grain. Let's choose a color, like a gray color here. If I do a test, you can see my flow map is a bit too big, but I'll just put in a little bit of this anyways. But you can see I'm getting that nice palette knife effect. Now, you will get a little bit of spillover with your impasto, I'm not sure how you say that. You can see here, that's okay, we'll erase that later, so don't worry about that too much. I'm going to go back to that brush, and I'm going to reduce the scale of that clouds flow map. So I reduce the scale of that texture that I'm putting in. What you want to do here is you want to layer this up, because you don't want there to be a repeating pattern, it won't look right. I guess there is going to be a pattern that repeats, but you don't want it to be so consistent that it looks like a stamp, or, you know, you want it to look organic. Oops, I didn't mean to reduce my contrast. I want to reduce my scale. Just putting in a little bit of this here. And I'm kind of curving. You can see the direction that I'm pulling here. Curving it kind of down and away from the mountain so it slopes, because mountains are often shaped like that. And this is the shadow side of the mountain. I guess, well, maybe it's going to be the highlight side because more of the light's over here. So I'm going to make my color darker, maybe a bit more dark, so it's more clear that that's the shadow side. This will be the shadow side, and I'm going to paint in the opposite direction. But to me, this feels a lot closer to the Bob Ross painting style than what my technique has been for a while, which, if you have tried to paint mountains in my older technique before this, you'd know that we would have to paint in a whole bunch of stuff, then go in and create a mask, then select the chalk brush, then mask away some texture, change the texture, mask away a little more, and then add these layers and layers and layers, which isn't very intuitive. It really breaks up your flow, and the whole part of the Bob Ross and Bill Alexander painting style is to get into that quick painting zen state where you can just do it and you don't have to think about it and plan it out. So this is nice because since I have these two palettes open, yes, I have to change my textures a little bit here and there, but that, for one, gives me more control, and for two, it's not, you know, it's not all that difficult. So I like that. I'm going to make my color a bit lighter. You can also use this value scale here if you want a little bit more control over the values you're selecting. I could keep my highlight and shadow layers separate if I wanted to, but I'm not going to do that. You'll get different results whether you press lighter or heavier as well. So if I press lighter, I might get more of the paper grain. If I press heavier, I'll get more of the flow map. And go a bit lighter. And you can occasionally change your flow map scale. Feel free to experiment with other flow maps too. There's other ones in there that are pretty good. Make it larger. But yes, this is about as close as it gets to painting with a real palette knife in this particular technique. More shadow side. This is a really nice texture, and then we can, you know, just assume it kind of levels off down here, and you could put in whatever you wanted to. So I think that looks pretty good so far. We'll layer this up a little bit too, because I'm going to do some blending. I'm going to select the coarse oily blender. This can also use the dab stencil, so you can use the dab stencil while you're blending, which is really neat. I'm just going to pull a little bit of this here and there with light pressure just to kind of contour it so it kind of flows in that direction that I was trying to establish earlier. Don't push down or pull too hard, because then you kind of lose all your detail there, unless that's the effect that you want. Shadow side will do that as well. So that helps break up that pattern even more, and it helps it look like the paint's kind of getting pulled. And you can continue adding layers and layers if you like. Let's try some other flow maps here. So besides clouds, what else do we have? We have a gravel, which can be kind of cool. I'm going to select a lighter color. Gravel gives you a different kind of texture. All this detail, look at all this detail that it's adding really easily. It's pretty amazing. You'd think, you know, one little feature that they add like this couldn't make that much of a difference, but you know what, it does. And again, don't worry if you overpaint that impasto. That's not a big deal. We can get rid of that. I may try, because this is really, you know, one of a handful of times of me using this brush, so I really am kind of developing this as I go along. But I'll figure out a way to either prevent that impasto or do something about it. I'm gonna go even lighter. Again, change the scale of the gravel. You can add a couple juicy highlights there. And I guess if the light source is kind of behind the mountain, then technically when it gets to this other side of the mountain, it could switch and become the other side. But let's just say that there's a couple different light sources here. So maybe there's one that's off screen. So that just feels more natural to me. What else do we want to do to this? Let's add a little more texture on the other side as well. I want to cover up all your dark areas though. I'm going to start quoting Bob Ross here. I could start quoting Bill Alexander, but you wouldn't be able to understand anything I'm saying. Power, power, power. Faster, faster, faster. Yes. That guy was a character. If you don't know who Bill Alexander was, he was the person who taught Bob Ross how to paint like Bob Ross. So Bob Ross tends to get all the credit for this kind of painting technique, but he really isn't the one who invented it. And neither is Bill Alexander really, because all Bill Alexander really did, I guess, is discover that you could take some stuff called magic white, which I believe was some sort of paint thinner that was used in painting houses and things. It wasn't used for art. You'd get it at the hardware store, and he figured out that you could mix it with oil paint and thin it down, and then you could do the wet on wet technique. So that's my understanding of it. But if you're into watching Bob Ross on YouTube and Twitch, definitely check out Bill Alexander, because he has a bunch of stuff too. I'll answer a couple comments really quick. This has 200 likes already, really? That's crazy. I don't believe you. It's only 13 people watching though, so I don't know how this can have 200 likes. Ethan says, did you do this in 5 minutes? I've done it in 13 minutes, I guess. I talked for a little while though, so let's say 10. Sweet and sour chicken's here. Hello, sweet and sour chicken. You sound delicious, except I don't eat meat, so sweet and sour tofu. Autumn Shine's here. Haven Ross is here. Says this is super good, thank you. War Healer's here. Yay, first time catching you live. Thanks for joining, War Healer. Little Polar's here. Oh, you were already here. Never mind. Little Polar is back from vacation. I just read the comments backwards there. Okay, so I think I'm okay with adding to my mountain. I don't know if I want to add much more at this point other than maybe color. Because I want this to be quick. If it's going to be in the style of Bob Ross, it needs to be like, you know, a half hour to an hour. So I need to figure out how to get rid of this impasto. Now, I haven't done this yet, but I have a pretty good idea of how to do that. So what I need to do, I don't usually use impasto very much when I'm painting. I need a depth eraser. And maybe I will add that as a brush to my workspace. Depth eraser is not erasing quite as much depth as I want. So let's see here what we can do to this. So we got our opacity all the way up. No, that doesn't seem to be doing it either. Well, I can think of some other ways to do this too. Let's see, layers, or no, we want canvas. Maybe there's another brush here. This never happened on Bob Ross, where he was like, I can't figure out my digital art software. No, you'd think that depth eraser would do it. What's depth smear do? Nothing either. Ah, I know. Control D to deselect. Nope. Let's try that depth eraser again. Let's try the regular eraser. There we go. It's the regular eraser. So let's try this. Let's back up a couple steps. I'm going to go back to when I have this selection, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Select, Invert Selection, then I'm going to hit Delete to clear. Booyah! That's how we get rid of that impasto. Now it's going to leave a little bit of edge here. If you want to be really nitpicky about that, you could go to your eraser, and you could erase that. I think it looks better with a darker edge, but in a couple places it might look good lighter, so I won't stress about it too much. If we look at this up close though, you can see here, look at all that nice paint depth. I don't know if you can really see that on the screen, but it's got that shine to it. And if we go to, let me zoom out here so this fits better. If we go to Canvas, Surface Lighting, this will probably crash my computer or something here. Let's see what happens. I can move the direction of the light around. If I want it to be on the other side, kind of hard to tell what this is doing, but it's controlling the light of the impasto. So I'm going to cancel. I just wanted to show you that you could do that. The mountain and the mountain texture, let's go ahead and group those for now. Take a drink of water. Shauna Moore is here. Hi, Shauna. Juan Rincon is here. Got their first Cintiq 2 weeks ago, and boy, is it amazing. Awesome. Glad you're enjoying that Cintiq. Shauna says, beautiful mountains. Thank you, Shauna. War Healer says, would you like to do digital art critiques live? I think that's entertaining to watch. You know, I have thought of that. I just haven't done it yet. But yeah, that's definitely on my radar. And if anybody's watching who has submitted something, or if anybody watches this later, a ton of people have sent me critiques. Like I've probably got 25, 30 critiques or so that I have a backlog of. So I'm going to try to get to them as quickly as I can, and you know, maybe I'll do like a big batch of them or something. But for me to critique something, change whatever I change in that, record it and edit it takes me quite a few hours to do. So even though I end up breaking it down into a video that's like, you know, 15, 30 minutes long, it probably took me a few hours to do that. So just keep that in mind. It's going to take me a little while to get to those. Forest Fall is here. Hello, Forest Fall. I'm doing this live stream. I was doing it earlier and I was trying to do it with Restream so I could stream to both Twitch and YouTube, but something happened and I couldn't tell if I was live or not. So if you tuned in earlier and I started going off like I was about to do something and then I just stopped and stared for a minute and then shut off the stream, it's because on my end it was showing that the stream was working, but then when I looked on YouTube it said it was offline. So that I may have been looking in the wrong spot there though. So I'm going to use that same select layer content trick again, where I right click on that mountain layer and choose select layer content. There's also a button for that in my workspace up here. Then I'll create a new layer at the top of that mountain group and I'll call it tint. I'll set the composite method. Actually, no. See, this is old habits here. Old habits, bad habits. Old habits die hard. Okay, so this is what I have to train myself to do, because a lot of stuff has changed in Corel Painter 2017, and since I've worked with it for so long, doing things a certain way, it's like all of a sudden, you know, I have trouble remembering that these new features are here. So here's what we're going to do. No longer do I need to really necessarily, unless I want extra control over my tinting, do I need to create, do I need to set this to a composite method. In fact, I could even just paint on the same layer if I wanted to add color to tint it. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to select Which brush? Let's do the airbrush for now. Maybe I'll just no, let's do being indecisive here. Let's try smooth dab knife. No, that is not what we want. This is what I want. Dab texture airbrush. Okay, so up here in our glazing panel, which you can get to anytime you have a glazing brush selected, you can pop that open here. You can now set your merge mode, which is the equivalent of creating a layer and setting a composite method. So I have those same composite methods here. I have multiply, and just for the sake of showing you how this works, this may not be how I end up doing this for the whole piece, but I'll just show you real quick. We will select a brown, and now when I paint, if I just keep painting over that same area, it builds up over and over again. So I paint over here, it's light. So you can see it works a lot like, I'll select the airbrush. It works a lot like it would if you were, oops, I need to set the composite method there. It works a lot like it would if you were doing traditional glazing. So I can glaze over this. Just an example. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to establish a base color first, and then I'll do a little bit of finer glazing over that. So I am going to do that, multiply composite method, and then I'm going to fill. I kind of like that brown, I'll go with that. Probably be good to have a sky color too, so I'm going to create a tint layer for the sky and group those. And that tint can be multiply as well. And let's use our little interactive gradient tool here for this, because I usually would paint these in, but now I'll choose a different preset here. Let's see, we can go with that kind of orangey color to maybe a deeper orange. Let's try that. And we want to set that to normal. I was playing around with that earlier. Let's try that again. I need to deselect that selection with Control D also. There we go. So I got my nice gradient there. I just want to re-demonstrate that so that you can see how this tool is working. So here's my gradient. So I can really easily draw my sky like this. And if I wanted to add an intermediate color, I could do that. Easiest thing to do is pop open your gradients panels here. And I have control over the node. And maybe I'll keep this as this orange color, but maybe I'll change the bottom node to more of a yellow. Yeah, I like that. And since this is a palette drawer, I can just close it, and if I want to get it again, I can just open it. So it doesn't have to stay on the screen and clutter up my workspace. So now we got some Bob Ross looking stuff going on here. So I'm going to go to that tint layer for the mountain, turn on preserve transparency. Now I'm going to select that dab texture airbrush, because now I feel like I can go in here and add a little bit of texture. Now it is going to be kind of hard to see what this is doing, so let me pick a really horrible bright color here that you can see better. And maybe I'll pick white, that might show it better. No, it won't, because I'm using multiply. Let's try black. See how I'm painting, but I'm still getting that dab stencil? What that's doing is now when I paint in here, I'm still getting that texture as I'm adding color. Make that a little bit lighter in a couple places. And of course I can make that texture smaller. It doesn't seem to be showing up quite as much as I want it to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new layer. And I'm going to set, oh, actually no. Yes, I will create a new layer. I'm being indecisive here. This is what happens when I'm just working on the fly. I'm going to set that to screen. There we go, now it's showing up better. So I want it to be more apparent. It was a bit too subtle. So there's some of that sky color reflecting on the shadow side there. And then over here, we can brighten it up more. We need to make sure that we get our selection active there. Warm that up a bit. All right. Now, what do we want to do next? Let's add some nice foreground here. I'm gonna just name this layer so I know what it is. Maybe we'll add some grass. I'm going to try the sponge, which is also a glazing brush. And let's try putting in some of this here like so. I'm going to increase the gravel size. So now we got some land there, create a new layer. I think I need something with more texture. Let's try this. So we got these little growth things that are growing up the mountain. Maybe they're little trees or something. And then it kind of turns into grass in the foreground. I have this set to screen right now, so I'm going to set this back to normal because it was ending up being too green there. Since everything's kind of got this yellowish orange cast, we want to try to keep it within that. We can have a few hints of green. Okay. I think I want to have a little bit of mountain in the background too. Here's some things that, well, I'm doing a lot of things that Bob and Bill can't do. But here's one here I can paint behind. I'm going to make that a multiply composite method. I can paint behind these mountains here. So if I decide later that there's something I want to add, pretty easy to add in, but that adds a little bit of depth to the mountain there. And again, I can go in. I'm going to use just the smooth dab knife. I'm not going to worry about the impasto this time. And just give those a little bit of texture. They don't need a whole lot. Doesn't need to be that dark either. Let's just go a bit darker. Still too dark. Let's go, there we go, a bit lighter like that. And then we can fade that back too into the distance to make it look further away. It needs a couple more highlights like that. I'll zoom in so you can see this nice texture that we're getting here. Trying to find the right balance of color there. Might lighten the bottom of that as well. I think it's all right like it is. We'll blur it a little bit though. I'm going to go to Effects, Focus, Soften. Only needs to be softened a little bit though. I'm going to go back to my mountain texture. I'm just going to merge those layers together with Control E. Actually, I'm going to redo that. I'm just going to select the mountain texture layer and hit Control E. That's a new feature in Corel Painter 2017 as well, just merging one layer down with the layer beneath it, and it retains the bottommost name. If you watch closely what I was doing, when I did it the other way, it ended up with the wrong layer name, which is not what I wanted, so that's much better. I think that in a few places here and there, I want to add some dark back in. You can hear I'm just kind of tapping here with this brush. I want to try to keep my shadows on the shadow side here. So I overpainted a bit. Little bits of red kind of help it pop out there. Gives it a little more flavor so it's not all the same color. And then I'm going to go back to this layer here. Do a little more Bob Ross style stuff here. Let's try blending it straight upwards with a big brush. That'll help this look like distant pine trees that are standing up. Just straight up. If you do it sideways, it'll look like your trees are blowing over, as a Bob Ross would say. I'll zoom in so you can see the effect that that had there. If you get a little bit of white fringe, what you can do is set that to a gel cover composite method. It might fade it back a little bit, so if that happens, you can always duplicate that layer a couple times. And then Control E to merge that down a couple times, and then try setting it back to gel cover. It should be a bit bolder now. I think on the mountain, I'm going to go ahead and just, well, let's see what happens if I merge these mountain layers here together. Let's see if that hurts it at all. It changes it a little bit. I don't think it really hurts though too much. So I merge those mountain layers together. And then I think I want to blend this a little bit. Let's use the blur blender. Make sure you don't have any selections active when you do this. I'm just going to blur right along the edges because they don't need to be so sharp. And if you wanted to, you could use your Distorto brush to kind of pull it around and smudge it if you want to. I'm not going to do that though because we've got the impasto. So if you're having trouble with this impasto, let me just show you a quick little trick here. This is going to mess up a couple things, but it's okay because this is important. The impasto, if you save as a riff, is going to stay there, and sometimes if you smudge stuff around, you end up with this, you know, like I can show you here. You can see the impasto, which is fine where it's at because it's on the mountain. But if I take it and I smudge it, see how that impasto stays but the color moves? I think what I would have to do is go to Advanced Brush Controls. No, I want to look for impasto. I don't even know if impasto works as a plugin brush. Let's find out. Brush Control Panels, impasto, Draw to Color, and Depth. Oh, okay, it works. So that's what you would do if you wanted to smudge that around. Now, if that impasto is just getting in the way and interfering, what you can do is you can go to File, Save As, save it as a PSD, because saving it as a PSD, it's not going to be, the impasto is not going to be compatible with Photoshop. It'll still show up visually, but it's going to get rasterized or flattened down into an image. So go ahead and save. Then you'll have to close after it's done saving. Now don't do this if you want your impasto to still be editable. But I'm going to close this, and then I'm going to open it again. And now, regardless of what I do, I can now smudge that stuff around, and that impasto is not getting in the way. It's basically flattened down, so that may be good to do now and then. I just feel like blending this a little bit more, so I will. Okay. Helps if you kind of play with the angles too a little bit here. And changing to a Photoshop PSD changes this gel composite method, because gel cover is not compatible with Photoshop, so you just have to change that back. It's not a big deal. Need some trees in the foreground, some happy trees. So I have a brush that I've had for a while, which is a particle brush, and it is called Fan Dabs. Got all of those palette drawers. See how I can collapse both my nozzles and my particles? Or if I wanted to collapse all these, I could do that. If I wanted to collapse all these, I could do that. Really quickly get them all back. I'm going to need to select my additional color here to use for this brush, and then this particular brush recommends linear size P angle D color, so I will locate those in my image hose palette, which you may not be able to see because it's covered up by my head. So I'm going to, since I'm not using the papers and flow maps, move that up. And you may need to drag these 3 little dots to get the palette to open up wider. It's kind of hard to get in there, but that's what you have to do. That's just because I reloaded my workspace, and you'll have to do that if you've just freshly installed it with a few of these palettes, but once it's done, and you won't have to do it again. So I want linear size P angle D color, which is that one there. And I can hide that. I don't need that to be in my way. Create a new layer for my pines. And let's put in a big old tree here. Big old son of a gun. Okay, and then, you know, every tree needs a friend, so we'll put in his buddy over here. And maybe we'll put in a little one over here. So I'm using pen pressure to get bigger shapes here, so I'll demonstrate this with a color you can see. Light pressure, heavier pressure. See how it changes? So what I'm doing is I'm doing short little strokes, and each time I'm pressing harder, and I make my brush bigger and bigger. That's how I get that shape there. And you can do the trunks above or below, it's up to you. I'm going to do mine above. This will be a good opportunity to try out some more dab textures here. Let's use the smooth palette knife. Let's try that and see if that's the thing that we want here. I want kind of a warm color like this. Okay, put in my trunks here. I'm going to mask them off a little bit so that you can't see the whole trunk. So I'm going to create a mask, and then I'm going to select black, and let's try the smooth dab knife. let's check out our flow map and see what we're using here. Let's change that to clouds. So we get a bigger texture. Maybe I want to make that a bit smaller though. That works really well for masking. Make that a bit smaller and up towards the top. Can get finer there because the leaves would be smaller up at the top. If you want to bring some of it back, if you did it a little too strong there, you can switch to white and do that. And you could also go back to your smooth palette knife if you want to really have more control over where it's showing, but I think that's okay like that. It doesn't have to be absolutely perfect. I just want to make sure that in these gaps here it's nice and filled in. So we'll go ahead and apply that layer mask now. Right click on it, choose apply layer mask, then on that trunks layer turn on preserve transparency. Select that smooth dab knife again. Lighter color this time. And since the tree is being covered, I guess it doesn't really matter too much where you put your highlights. This will just be more like texture. And maybe I'll make it a little bit lighter. There we go. Maybe add a little bit of that sky color as well to give it a little bit of glow. A little more orange. Some nice textures here. I don't want to do it too orange though. Okay, now we'll need to do foreground. Let's just say foreground, whatever. Let's just group these. That way I don't have to be too specific with the names. So this will be the foreground leaves, I guess, for the pine tree. I want that fan dabs particle nozzle, or fan dabs image shows nozzle, I mean. And that linear size P angle D brush again. And I want to pick a pine tree color here. I want to make sure that I use that for my additional color though. I'm hunting around till I find the color that I want. That'll be okay there, I think. Yes, okay. So we'll put some highlights on the tree here. You notice I keep changing my brush. The keyboard shortcut I'm using to do that is holding down Control and Alt and then dragging. I do it really fast because, you know, I've done it many times. Let's go a bit lighter. That'll help them kind of look more three-dimensional. A little bit lighter again, maybe shift it a little bit. And also just tap with this brush too, short little taps. And now we can go ahead and merge our trees down together to a single layer. And I'm going to go to Effects, Tonal Control, Adjust Colors, shift the hue a little bit here. And I want want to try to do this a different way, I think. I'm going to create a new layer. I'm going to use select layer content to get a selection of that layer. I'm going to set this to multiply. Maybe I want to add a tint like this. Oops, I need to do that for my main color though. There we go. I like that better. Nice. Zoom out a bit and kind of see how I'm looking so far. Might have covered up too much of my trunks. So let me see if I can, well, that's okay. I'm not too worried about it. Bob Ross covered up stuff all the time. So let's see what else to add to this piece. Maybe a little bit of texture overall. Might be kind of fun. So we'll do that. I'll create a new layer and I'm going to select one of my texture brushes. Let's see, I'll go ahead and hide these so we can see that. Got my texture palette here. Stencil Flow Map Spongy T will be good. Look at our textures. Been liking this desk paint texture. This is a fun texture. Let's click on show texture. Make sure your texture is covering your whole canvas here. And then you can of course use your dab stencil for this too. So now if I paint, I need to do Control D to deselect my active selection. And I need to do this on a layer like the sky. Now, why is that not showing up? Let's try one of the other ones here. Nope. Something not right here. There we go. I'll work on the tint layer there. I'll put in a little bit of that texture there into the sky. Maybe we'll go a bit lighter with that. Let's look under texture brushes. Let's reduce the strength. There we go. I just want that to be kind of subtle. And then this layer up here I need to set to overlay. Oops. That needs to be that middle gray color there. Okay, now it's working like I wanted it to. So here, let me go back a few steps. Doing the old Bob Ross backtrack here. Don't mind me. So the trick here for this texture is you want to create a new layer above everything else. I was trying to do it a more difficult way. And you need to set that layer to overlay, and then you need to select this absolute middle neutral gray here, which is a value of 128. You want to fill that layer with that color. It won't look like anything happened because overlay makes that particular kind of layer disappear or become invisible. And then now I can go in here and I can paint in my texture over the whole thing. And let's try a different texture. Concrete, that might be kind of fun. Then you have the option of reducing the opacity of that layer. And let's see if we can see this more clearly, because I know it might not show up in the live stream. See that nice texture there that I added? I just want a little bit of that. And just gives it a little bit more character. How are we doing on time here? Let's see, 49 minutes, okay. Not bad. I'll go ahead and answer some questions and comments, and then I think I'll call this piece done. I'll go ahead and sign it too. Wouldn't be a Bob Ross, Bill Alexander tribute if I didn't sign it. I'm going to sign it using this yellow color here. And I just like to initial things. And we have a finished painting. So, let's see. I'm sorry if I missed some comments. Feel free to comment again and I'll try to answer. I'm not gonna scroll up. I'm just gonna start from where I can see because I know there's a lot that I missed. Miss Mayhem's here. Hello, Miss Mayhem. Igor's here again. Third stream. Yes, I remember you, Igor. Good to see you again. Sounds like some people know each other here too from the other streams. That's cool. Mick's here. Hey, Mick. Kim Lemon's here. Hello, Kim. Miss Mayhem says it's turning out really good. Thank you, Miss Mayhem. Kim says, can you say hi, Kim? It will make your week. Hi, Kim. Miss Mayhem says I might not notice the comments very often. Yes, I was. This is a live stream where I knew if I pay too much attention to the comments that it'll take me like 3 hours to do this. So I just had to get in the zone. Autumn Shine says looks good or looks nice. Thank you. L. Leonard says just saw this was live and the painting is done. Well, don't worry, it'll be recorded and you'll get to see the recording. But thanks for tuning in anyways. I'll be doing more of these live streams. I usually do a few each month, sometimes one a week, sometimes more than one a week. I think last week I did like 3 or 4 in a row almost. People always ask when my next live stream is going to be. I always say I don't know because a lot of the times I do them kind of spontaneously. So if I do plan one, the best way to know is to subscribe to me on YouTube if you haven't already. Follow me on Facebook and Twitter, and between those 3 sources, you'll probably get an update the next time I do a live stream. All right, so unless anybody has any other questions, I'm going to go ahead and call this one finished. I appreciate you all tuning in. And if you're interested in trying out these techniques, you can get Corel Painter's free 30-day trial for Corel Painter 2017. And the trial version, you can use it for 30 days, is basically the full version. So there's no limitations other than after 30 days, you can't use it unless you purchase a license. So go ahead and try it. You know, if you've never used Corel Painter, it's a fun application and it can do some pretty cool things that other applications it's not even on their radar. So that's why it's my favorite digital painting application, because I can get in here and do this Bob Ross style stuff. Honestly, if I had to try to do this in Painter 2016, it would have taken me twice as long because of all that mountain stuff that I did really quickly, even though I noodled around with it a little bit. You know, I didn't have to create masks and all that stuff, so I like that a lot. Miss Mayhem says she doesn't get notifications anymore. Well, usually you have to go to your subscription feed, and if I'm live streaming, it'll tell you. I don't know if you'll get one via email, but if you follow me on like Twitter or Facebook, I don't know if you get notifications that way, but that's a good way to do it. And in the future, I'll try to find a better way to do the notifications as well. Joy says, I just downloaded Corel Painter 2017 and they're a complete newbie to it. One thing you could do in addition to watching my tutorials for older versions of Painter, because they've added stuff, but they don't usually really take stuff away. So a lot of what you learn in my tutorials, even if they're for older versions of Corel Painter, is still applicable here. Although as these new features come about, then my technique changes a bit. So, you know, if you're watching a video I did about mountains, there's going to be all these roundabout ways to do it when now we have the dab stencil brushes that we can use. So it's, you know, things are going to be changing as far as my techniques. But you'll still learn a lot, you know, painting the trees and the sky and a lot of these other principles are still pretty universal. I have a free landscape painting course that you can take. It's on my website, aaronrutten.com. That'll teach you how to do a lot of the stuff that I did here. And if you want to learn about Corel Painter specifically, I made a course for the previous version of Painter 2016. And again, a lot of the stuff that's covered in that course is still going to be applicable to 2017. So if you want to learn, you know, from all of the important features like the menus and how to pick brushes and how to basically use the application, but then transition into actually doing a painting, that's a good course to take, because it focuses really on what I find important to my technique. So, and I'm not going to cover absolutely everything in Corel Painter because there's a lot, and a lot of the stuff I don't use, but what I cover will give you a good foundation for working with my videos. So I'd recommend that to you. Again, you can go to my website, aaronrutten.com. There's probably a card in this video too. I think if you click in the top right, or you look in the video, I don't think there's one in the description, but you'll be able to find it on my website. And that'll get you set up, then you'll be on track. Shauna wants to know, why did I add the bright gel effect at the base of the mountain? Those are supposed to be kind of distant trees. I just, just showing off some different ways of doing things. They are kind of bright, but it is kind of also like a surreal kind of piece, so wasn't going for like exact realism here by any means. I mean, technically speaking, if the light source is predominantly behind the mountain, then there wouldn't really be a whole lot of highlight on the mountain. So it's kind of like I put in 2 light sources, which there could be, there's nothing wrong with that. Autumn only gets notifications from their iPad. Miss Mayhem only has their phone, so they can't experiment. Chuck Morgan says Corel is knocking it out of the park lately. Definitely. And they have a really good team of both people who work with Corel or who work for Corel, and then they work really closely with artists like me as well to to help make it a better product. So I think that's really awesome. And yes, they are doing a great job, especially with these brushes. I mean, I'm really happy with all this stuff. You can already see from my workspace, it's like, I've already found a ton of brushes that I like, and I've gotten it all sorted and categorized, and I know what palettes I want to be together and which ones I want to be separate, and it's fun. I know I'm dragging this on because I said I was going to end this, but a lot of what I like about being a digital artist versus focusing more on traditional art is that digital art and computer technology are constantly evolving, and when you work with a media that's constantly evolving, things don't get stale. Like there's always going to be something new. Each year I'm going to have some new thing to play with. I mean, I don't know if anyone else who's tested this stuff has even come up with the idea of a palette knife. I don't know if anybody cares to, and if they have, I don't know if anybody's developed one for this particular style of painting. So I might be the first person to make a brush like this. I might be the first person to think of even trying to do that, and that to me feels better than, yes, I'm copying a traditional painting technique, but in some ways I'm pioneering certain things by being on the leading edge of digital art versus oil painting, which has been around for centuries. So Joy has a Wacom Intuos Pro tablet. That's a great tablet. They're advanced in Photoshop, but this is awesome. They love Bob Ross, learned a lot from him 20 years ago. Yes, this is like, a lot of people use Photoshop, but Photoshop can't do this. Sorry, Photoshop. You're not even coming close. You got some stampy looking brushes that can make textures like that, but it doesn't work in the same way. Autumn Shine says, where's the best place to get a drawing tablet? The best place, probably, let's say if you want to buy one locally, you could go to Best Buy. You might be able to find one in some other retail store, like maybe they might have them at like an office supply store, or anywhere that's going to sell software will probably have one. If you want to buy one online, which might be easier, you can get one from Wacom's website, or you can order them from Amazon, which is probably what I would do. If you go to my website, aaronrutten.com, there's a products page. It's tablets and software. You'll be able to find it there on my main page. And that has a whole list of all the tablets that I recommend, and it has links to be able to buy them. So that's where I would get it. But, I'm a little biased there. Joy subscribed to my channel. Thank you, Joy. But looking at my older tutorials too. Joy's interest is bringing my artwork from Photoshop into Corel. I'm a photographer and a digital artist. Cool. That'll be fun. And if you save your Corel Painter work, as I did here, as the PSD format, you can bring it into Photoshop. And I bounce my stuff back and forth between Photoshop and Painter all the time. Leonard says, if one can't afford a license, what free program would you suggest? I would recommend watching my video that's called Top 5 Free Digital Painting Applications, something like that. You'll be able to find it on my channel on the main page there. Should be under Artist Favorites, and that'll go over the top 5 that I think are the best. What I ranked the highest there was Krita. Krita doesn't in any way compare to Corel Painter. It has some stuff that Corel Painter has. It has some stuff that Corel Painter doesn't have, but for the most part, Corel Painter is really, if you're going to follow along with my videos, you're probably going to need Corel Painter. Some people have followed along with my courses using Art Rage, but you have to do a whole lot of workaround stuff. And in this case, painting this mountain you'd be pulling out your hair trying to do it in Photoshop. But I'm sure if you watched videos on, how to paint mountains with Photoshop, there's people who have techniques for doing it, but it might have taken a lot longer than how I did mine. Who knows? Miss Mayhem says, love listening to you talk, though. Well, thank you. Joy says, it's going to take a while to set up her workspace. Where can we download your brushes? I'll just show you real quick. Why not? I'll give you a little walkthrough. There is a video on my channel that's called Corel Painter 2017 Workspace, and that goes into detail about how to install it and all that, so I won't go into a whole lot of detail here. AaronRutten.com is my website, and then you will go to Painter Workspace. I mentioned that store I have, that's available here. And then I think I mentioned earlier the landscape course and the other courses are available up here. So Painter Workspace. And then oh, there we go. Okay, I did something to my website earlier, so I just had to refresh. And then you can get to it, this page here. There's details about how you can access it. Again, I won't go into all that here, but it's brand new. It's got a bunch of new brushes. A good chunk of my brushes have been updated. Like, for instance, the airbrush is now a glazing brush, and a lot of the other brushes use glazing and a lot of other technologies like the dab stencils to make them look more realistic. Mick got themselves into a straw, and it's amazing. That's cool. Chuck Morgan says, digital art is cleaner. If I clean my brush like Bob Ross, all hell would break loose in the home. Definitely. Autumn doesn't have a Best Buy near their house, and they don't have PayPal or anything. Well, you can buy stuff online with your credit card or your debit card too. But that's about all I know as far as places to buy it. Any tips for using Krita? I don't think I really have any Krita videos, sorry, but you might be able to follow along with some of the principles that I teach for Corel Painter. Krita's hard to use, I agree it is. Mick used it and it was horrible. Tommy says, quite easy if you stick with it. I think anything is easy if you stick with it. Like, you could really use any of these applications. It just depends on what your preferences are and what your goals are. Someone who draws comic book art probably isn't going to necessarily need some of the stuff that Painter has. But then again, there might be some stuff that's very useful. So, I would imagine that people will kind of find their preference. And everything is available as a trial, so try the trials. I mean, I did that in my videos, all my review videos. I just installed all the trials, and I had a list of 100 different things that I find useful in my technique, and then I checked to see if the application had it and how well it ranked and all that, and that's how I figured it out. So some people like Fire Alpaca and Paint Tool Sai. Those are also pretty good. Aaron Gaming's here. What's up, Aaron Gaming? Fellow Aaron. I didn't get any viruses when I downloaded Sai. Someone was saying that they did, but if you're trying to download pirated stuff off of torrents, then yeah, you might get a virus. Sometimes you get false positive stuff too. It's not necessarily a virus. Medibang is actually the more recent version of Fire Alpaca. Just so everybody knows, Medibang is based off of Fire Alpaca. It's Medibang. It's a little bit better, I think. Okay, OMG says, I like your bandana. Thank you. I just thought, I'd change it up and put something on my head this time. Joy says, mix and match work from different applications. That's how you make art on your own. Definitely, use the right tool for the right job. There's a lot of stuff that Photoshop can do that Painter can't, and vice versa. And so that's why I use those two. I'll dip into ArtRage now and then. And, if I want to do some animations, I'll use Krita because it works, pretty decent. Or I might use both Photoshop and Krita to make animations. So, I don't always just use one single application. Any tips for a traditional artist who's new to digital art? I don't know that there's really any. I don't know if the rules are really any different. I would watch my video called 10 Mistakes Digital Artists Make, and that will, I guess, in a better way communicate the digital pitfalls that you might have. That's been a really popular video, and a lot of people have found it pretty useful. Joy says there's a $99 Corel Painter 2017 upgrade. That is true. It's for US customers. It may be available in other countries. I don't know that for sure. And you have to upgrade from a previous version of Corel Painter, and I think there's a limitation on which versions you can upgrade from. I think that might be limited to X3 2015 and 2016, but don't quote me on that. You'd want to double check the details on that. To get that upgrade, you can watch I think one of the most recent videos I put it out today, which teaches you how to do the upgrade. I know I keep saying check out my videos, but that's why I make the videos. A tip is to get used to the pen before you try to draw anything professional. That's good advice from Stuff by Eliza. And the application should have smoothness. That's good too. Smoothness can be hard for some people to use, so you can try it with and without. I usually use smoothness just for my inking, and I don't use it for pencil or anything else, or for painting. Autumn Shine finds MS Paint the best. Really? MS Paint. That's a hard one to use. Okay. Miss Mayhem's used a mouse for 5 years. Wow. Yeah, it's good that you're getting a drawing tablet. It'll feel good. A mouse is frustrating. Cosmic Infinity tried the Illustrator trial. Illustrator is good too, but that is vector art, and it's kind of a really different kind of art from what I'm doing here, but it's also good depending on the style that you draw in. Especially if you have a mouse, that's a good program to use because you have more control. Eliza says do an MS Paint challenge sometime. I could do that. I think I did do it for part of a live stream once, but it was just kind of a joke. It'd be hard for me to do MS Paint. I did do a Mario Paint live stream you can check out on my channel, and that's pretty similar. Okay, so for real this time, I am going to go ahead and wrap this up. Thanks everybody for watching. I really appreciate it. Thanks for all your likes and subscribes and all that stuff. I will be doing another live stream soon, and I hope you can join me for that. Thanks for watching, and good night or good morning or good afternoon, wherever you are. See you later.